Interesting. Looks like we are good to go. Let's see. Just make sure I got everything up. Hey everyone, it's Commander Ship, and I'm here with our new show, Content Not Found. If you remember, it was self-titled, so we used to call it the Commander Ship Show. No longer calling it that. We teased that this new show format, Content Not Found, while it would take a lot of the things we've been doing in the past, as far as like talking box office results, movie news, and things like that, we're just really trying to separate it away from my moniker. Because I would also like to have other people join in and be able to like co-host or host it on their own when I'm not available, especially if I got to run other things for Nerd Union. And it's kind of hard to do that if everything's got my moniker or my nickname on it. So that's part of the reason that we stopped doing that as well. So just give you a little bit of backstory on what's coming on here. We have some really cool graphics coming. Jerry Maynard, Ace Trainer Jerry, had developed some stuff for us, so we'll have that up soon. It's really kind of cool static, like TV static background that's going to come up. So I'm really looking forward to that. But we didn't want to keep waiting for certain things to get done, so we'll go ahead and get started. At the worst possible time, we got a Hollywood writer's strike, which also means eventually we're going to run out of content. So we have plenty to talk about the summer box office and going into the fall, but we've picked an interesting time to come back. But it does mean we get the report on the strike. We got some news on that later. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse came out this weekend. Holy crap. This is not going to be a spoiler review. You can go check those out. You can check a spoiler-free and a spoiler review coming out tomorrow. They're supposed to be out yesterday, but it's going to be coming out tomorrow. I actually have some work and editing to do on that tonight. But we'll get that out soon. So if you want to do that, if you want to have a spoiler conversation, feel free to read that review. I'm going to be on Clubhouse tomorrow. If you follow Nerd Union or Nerd Union House on Clubhouse, you can definitely come and join and have a spoiler chat there. If people really like that, we might do another one later this weekend. Maybe do it on Discord as well, because we got a really strong Discord community. So we could also do it there. Without further ado, like I said, not doing a Spider-Man review on here. Just give you my quick impressions. If you need any convincing to go see it, I've already seen it twice, so I'll give you that toward the end of this show. But yeah, this is not going to be a Spider-Verse review. So if you're worried about getting spoilers, I'm just going to give quick impressions, some things that stood out to me watching it without really breaking down particular scenes. And then later we got to talk about IMAX, because good Lord, there's a complicated fight happening right now with IMAX screens between Tom Cruise and Christopher Nolan. And it's complicated. I probably don't come down on this the way that you might expect. That is all I'll say for now. But first, we are going to do a segment, kind of like if you've watched State of Nerd Union, we call it Quick Bites, just kind of quick hits of the news. This is Quick Reels, because again, movie and TV focused. So our quick reel for today comes from the world of Barbie. So, that's coming out July 21st, and Oppenheimer's coming out the same weekend. So we got a nuclear toy slugfest coming out that weekend. But the shade of Barbie pink that's used in the movie. Now, the joke headline was that they used up the whole world supply of pink. That's not true. And they didn't even use up the whole supply of pink of that particular shade that's used by Mattel, and different other people have used the Barbie tint, that particular pink. But the production house, so there's different paint companies that kind of have contracts with different studios. They completely ran out. So the set designer for Barbie talks about how they ran them dry because you have to think about all the sets and the cars. Now, clothing, I didn't see that in the. This is again just a set production, like design. So I don't know if that would have included costumes or if that would be a different. I don't really think you'd be paint. You've used dyes, so I don't know why you would be using paint in that context for like clothing and stuff like that. So it's probably a separate entity. But the production company that handles the paint was plumb out, like struggling to keep up with it. So World Supply, not so much. It's fun, but it's not so much. But who was supplying Barbie? Who was supplying the set? Most definitely had issues. So kind of a fun little story there before the movie gets out. I'm just really excited to. I like that we're getting more. The new trailer didn't show too much, so I'm kind of glad we didn't have that happen. But we are getting a little bit more sense of what the movie direction wise, like Barbie seems to be having an existential crisis as far as their existence is about the best I can tell. Almost like if you took the last 20 minutes of Lego Movie and that cross between either being a toy and existing in the real world, and then like continuing that on for a whole. It seems like we're gonna get a lot more of that in the movie. So really curious how it's gonna go. Yeah, I'm excited. But that is all of our quick reels for today. Some weeks we'll probably have more of that. If you've watched the Commander Ship Show in the past, you're probably used to us having way more movie news and things dropping like that. And as movies start coming out for the fall, we'll probably get a good idea of things like what's going on. As projects can still be pitched during the strike, but you can't submit a script. So producers could come up with ideas and things like that, but when it comes to like green lighting and or like attaching writers and stuff to it, that process is at a hold. So even announcements that we give you or what we hear for the grapevine, there's going to be so many things about like whether that was legal and or it's just going to be stalled because we're not going to know who's writing attached to it. And I promise we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that pretty soon. But we got to talk about the weekend box office. Now, if you have heard me talk weekend box office, either just maybe on my social media wall or just in general, if you've ever had any conversations with me, I kind of hate reporting on the box office. It is a tool and function of our industry. It is something that we need to be aware of. But there's been some weird box office narratives. I'm not going to dive into all of them right now, but I'm going to kind of give you a broad brush of the box office narratives that have happened recently. We have been, or what's been said, or what's come for the grapevine, and I think I don't have any evidence of this, but it just feels like something Disney would push. Not that that when you think about the actual box office numbers, it's not really based in reality. So let's take the idea that the MCU is failing, for example, and that because Quantumania, the third Ant-Man movie, didn't do as well as they expected, that the MCU is just falling apart. The Ant-Man movies are some of the least profitable MCU movies. That's just fact. I don't know why you would be. I don't know why you thought the third one was going to do any better. If you think about Black Widow, Shang-Chi, both of those coming out of the pandemic. So, of course, their numbers are a little low. Shang-Chi did as well as it could for the weekend, and it came out on Labor Day in 2021. But not really surprised that those numbers-wise weren't that strong. But Black Panther, if it hadn't had to go against Avatar 2, might have made $1 billion. Guardians 3 right now is sitting at $750 million worldwide. I don't know if it's going to get to $1 billion because now you got the rest of the summer schedules coming out, but I think they're going to do fine. If you look at the rest of the movies that also came out, they've also done really good. So while some of the opening weekends may not have been what Disney wanted, this narrative that the MCU is just falling apart is just not true. Now, granted, again, if they wanted $1 billion from each one of those movies, it might see like, oh, we didn't hit where we wanted. Maybe have to retool and adjust. And even Thor: Love and Thunder, which has been a mix of like audience reaction, critical panned in some areas are really loved, still did really well. Like it's odd. And that sounds more like a talking point than it really is something that's rooted in data. Another thing, like Fast X. The conversation right now is it going to be profitable, or is it doing well worldwide? It's got over $660 million worldwide. So is it one of the lower grossing Fast and Furious movies? Yeah, but 660 million is nothing to scoff at. Like, now again, we've heard reports that the amount of money spent on this one movie was pretty high. It reports of $250 million. So that's a little crazy. And at 660, you just now have covered your expenses and then doubled your money. So, and we also don't know like how much marketing was thrown into that as well, because that could also have ballooned that 250 up past that. So it could be closer to 350, which is really like not the number that the studio Universal would have wanted. So that can be fair, but saying that it's a flop, ugh. So we have to be careful when we're reporting numbers. Again, we are trying to read it. We are trying to project what we think is going to happen or has happened, and like assign what we've seen happening online and stuff to like attendance and things like that. That is important. But we also got to be careful of like talking points that aren't actually coming from our analysis of that, but may be floated by studios. Again, I don't have evidence of that, but some of these points sound like studio talking points. So just wanted to throw that out there. I'm going to do another episode. We actually talk about that and dive into those more, because like that's been brought up with The Little Mermaid, and there is some legitimate worldwide box office issues with The Little Mermaid that are keeping it from probably being a really huge success. Because domestically, it did a solid Memorial Day weekend. It's not the largest Memorial Day weekend, but it was a solid Memorial Day weekend debut. But I don't know if it's going to have the legs to kind of make the billions of dollars that like Aladdin and Lion King did for Disney. It doesn't seem like it's going to have those kind of legs. Oh gosh, saying legs so many times for a Little Mermaid movie. Not sure if it's going to do that. And when you would expect it to do really well worldwide, it is also not doing that. So that may not be narrative. That's just actual looking at the numbers in front of us and saying, I don't know how they're going to get to, if your goal was $1 billion, I don't know how you're going to get there, especially when you're just now getting to covering expenses. So that one may be a more legitimate talking point. But how did Spider-Man Across the Universe do this past weekend? Domestically, it made $120 million. Did you know that tops the summer box office? That's pretty crazy. I would have predicted it being number 2 for the summer, behind Guardians, just because, and comparing it directly to its own box office when it came out in December of 2018, it's not quite fair. A lot of people just, myself included, were kind of like, Sony doing an animated Spider-Man movie, that doesn't seem good. And Aquaman also came out it was 2 weeks after. I apologize, it's either 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after. So it had some competition even when it released that December. They came out that December, but still went to make over $400 million at the box office. So pretty solid. But its debut weekend, not so much. It took the word of mouth getting out to really start to build up and get really people into that theater. So we had a strong base that I think a lot of people were not taking into account, because a lot of people had this movie pretty, maybe in like the 5th highest grossing as far as predictions, 5th highest grossing, like around on the average for what they would see in the summer, and it's number 1 debut weekend, and depending on what the legs are on this movie, and again, word of mouth is really strong. I've been talking about it all weekend. Other folks have been talking about it all weekend, just in my social media circles and online and different clubhouse rooms I've been in different spaces like that. So it's really solid. That could have a similar effect where it gets more people in on the second weekend. And when your only competition is Transformers Rise of the Beasts coming up, and that is the 7th Transformers movie. Ugh. I'm just saying, imagine if Little Mermaid hadn't came out Memorial Day weekend and was coming out this coming weekend. Based on the energy we already know, while again it debuted well, it wasn't as strong as Disney would have liked. How much do you think Spider-Man would probably compare pretty favorably or do really good this second weekend? I don't think it's going to do what Super Mario did this year. Super Mario had one of the best, one of the smallest drops we've ever seen for a movie. Period. Ever. Period. You know, you got to go. You got to look at like Avengers Endgame, Avatar 2. You got to look at movies like that for like small weekend drop offs. In comparison, like to compared to Super Mario, so I don't think Spider-Man's going to do that. But when your competition is just the seventh Transformers movie, yeah, I think you're gonna do okay. I think you're gonna do okay. So that will build some word of mouth. Now the third week it will be facing the Flash, so that is probably when I would see it drop down to that second or third slot. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if Transformers. Again, if Transformers does really well, and people really have apparently people really love. Again, I'm a Beast Wars fan, but that's not exactly what we're getting. We're getting a nod to Beast Wars. We're not really getting Beast Wars in this movie. So if Transformers were to do really well, obviously Spider-Man will hold down to that second slot because I don't see anything creeping up to take that second slot. But maybe it's a competitive weekend. You know, maybe Transformers makes 90 to 100, and then Spider-Man makes 70 to 80, which would be a really solid start for its second week and really show that Spider-Man's got some legs. I don't know. I'm predicting the word of mouth has been so good this weekend for Spider-Man though that going into next weekend it's going to do really, really well. I would not be surprised if it has a really strong hold going into the second weekend. But that's my prediction. If you're like I don't think it was that good that it's going to hold on weekend after weekend, throw it in the comments. Let me know what you think. And when we come back next weekend, and I give you next week, and I give you the next box office updates, you can let me know. With that said, yeah, Spider-Man took number one. It's worldwide over the weekend. Come back. Where did you go? Come back. 221 million. Also, nothing to scoff at. That's nothing to scoff at. I do wonder what its appeal is going to be outside of the U.S. Again, Spider-Man as a property is really big U.S. and outside, but this specific version of Spider-Man, I don't know. Because again, No Way Home did fantastic numbers domestically and across the world. Also has a bunch of that baked in MCU live action cross threads, whereas Across the Spider-Verse doesn't have that. So it can only rely on this base that is built up through word of mouth from the first movie, and then just additional people that have started to see it over the years since it's been out. So we'll see. I do want to look at some of the territories that are technically involved in the movie. So I'll be curious to see how India does, because we do get Pavatar and a couple of different characters that represent different regions of the world in the movie. So I'm kind of curious if by region, if there's maybe a uptick or maybe certain markets do better with this movie. That'd be interesting to see. So I didn't have time to pull that data, so we'll get to that hopefully later. Let's see. So yeah, obviously little second was Little Mermaid. Didn't have a super large drop from its number one debut last weekend. Surprisingly, Stephen King's Boogeyman was in the third place. Not what I was expecting. Apparently, a lot of people did like that horror movie, and 2023 has been pretty good for horror. Not gonna lie. We got Megan. Some people really like Skinamarink. I won't even get into that. Evil Dead Rise, as an example, is really solid, and it would have been in the top 10 up until this week. Just barely edged out and got into the 11th spot. So that movie is doing pretty well for a really, really low production amount, and only being in theaters for a couple weekends before it just got Fast X and everything was coming out in Guardians. Like it surprised me that it's collected as much as it did. I mean, its domestic was 67 million, and then worldwide it did, assuming Kenneth can find it very quickly. If I can't, we will move on. I cannot. We will go on, and now I'll maybe post that in the show notes. But again, pretty good time for horror. Actually, now I take that for the domestic worldwide so far, again, that was for this weekend. Scream, as far as like what's been released this year, Scream is still in the top 10 of releases. And I think Scream 6 was actually pretty good. So no, Scream 7, Scream 6, Scream 6, Scream 7. I can see the Roman numerals in my head. You know what? We'll talk about it later. But pretty good, pretty good year for horror so far. We'll have another conversation on that. All right. So if you were curious in the entire weekend box office, you can check that out in the show notes. And got it all listed out there. As always, you can also pull that up on Box Office Mojo and kind of go through and dive through those. I don't necessarily love throwing a bunch of numbers at you, especially since we don't have our graphic system up yet. So we can show you really cool things and throw that on the screen. Of course, if you do review this later and watch the non-live version, we'll have those added back in for you later. So again, check out show notes or watch the stream later. You'll be able to watch that out. But I think just talking about the keynotes from the weekend or what we like to do, going through and hitting every single part on the list. Yeah, I'm not really interested in doing that. That said, sometimes on the show we have covered streaming numbers. And I'm going to talk about why we're not covering streaming just yet. As you know, Netflix has started posting their numbers. Amazon's posted numbers. Samba, Smart TV Tracking, has tried to put out as many numbers as they can. But it's really hard and problematic that when streamers are the only ones producing their own numbers, and we also can't see past the top 10, right? We have to kind of keep track of our own data to see what has kind of fallen on and off of that top 10 list to see where it might possibly be. That's not very reliable. I'm not saying that we're talking about that information is that we shouldn't do it and that we're bringing in reporting it is shouldn't be done, but it's not very transparent. And I hesitate to just parrot the information that a streamer is giving to me. Or when they say, hey, this is the highest streaming movie of the year, compared to your movies, compared to your shows that were released on your platform, even giving us the streaming per minute metric. What does that mean in reference to a TV show, in reference to a movie? I'm sure we can work some measure of system out for that. And that's something I'm still putting some energy and thought into. And when I feel comfortable I feel good about this system, then we will report on those numbers. But until then, there's a reason our top streaming numbers or top streaming shows for the week are going to be kind of, honestly going to be kind of bare. And once we get a system in place, we'll do that. But for right now, I'm not knocking anyone that does report on it. I know Dan Merle does his weekly charts show and talks about streaming numbers. And actually, I'd be curious. Maybe I need to go back through. Maybe he gave an explanation that I missed on how he pulls his numbers. But he's also voiced some frustration at trying to pull streaming numbers. So this is why I'm good. I'm good not doing it right now, and we'll get back to it. All right. So that's all for our box office, and let's get into. So I already gave you my forecast for the weekend. Again, I think Transformers is going to do really well to start the weekend. And actually, maybe one distinction, even if Spider-Man were to overtake Transformers here in the U.S., as far as like hold it and keep the number one spot for week 2, Transformers will definitely do really well overseas. It's kind of the same thing with Fast X and the Fast and Furious franchises. When it gets outside of the U.S., action movies, U.S.-based action movies with great CGI special effects do really well across the world and across a variety of regions, markets, and territories. So it's actually it would not surprise me if we could see a kind of a flip. Transformers takes number one worldwide while Spider-Man holds on to the number one spot here in the U.S. So that would be my actual concrete prediction for next week. All right. So again, not a ton of casting and announcement news coming up, but we do have some. Some of you might like it. Some of you might roll your eyes. There's a third Hocus Pocus movie announced, but again, can't tell you who's writing on it because they can't confirm that information right now. The one thing that's interesting is that there were plenty of original cast members from the first Hocus Pocus. From the first Hocus Pocus movie due to schedule conflicts, weren't able to show up in the sequel. But with more lead time and knowing that this third one's going to come out, they may actually be able to bring them back in. Because we got Doug Jones coming back to play in the sequel. We may have to get some of the original cast members, seen them all grown up and brought into the third movie, along with the Sanderson sisters. Now, whether this is going to follow that potential prequel plot, because there was a conversation about maybe following more about the Sanderson sisters' beginnings, which we saw in the sequel, whether they're going to kind of continue that out. It's not, again, we don't have a story. We don't have any other confirmation other than it's happening. And I wasn't big on having a Hocus Pocus sequel in the first place, but the sequel is actually pretty good. So I actually like when a sequel gets announced. I actually don't mind being wrong on that, even if it makes my like, this feels like a nostalgia grab. But I really don't mind being proven wrong. I actually really enjoy that, because I famously thought Mad Max 4, thought Fury Road was going to be atrocious. And we all know how that turned out. That movie was amazing. Totally glad to be wrong. So when we get surprise hits like that, I'll gladly swallow my pride, and take that one on the chin. But okay. So yeah, that's Hocus Pocus 3. This is not a spoiler for Spider-Verse, but a lot of people, unfortunately, were not aware that it was going to be a part. There's part 1 that which came out this weekend and part 2. Previously, Sony had announced it as Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 and 2. Then the marketing kind of dropped off to Part 1 a little bit. Some of us were a little bit like, well, was that an oversight? If you've seen the movie this weekend, they do a full announcement at the end and say, the next one will be Beyond the Spider-Verse. So that's not a spoiler, but just, again, we knew there was going to be a third entry. But for some people that got kind of thrown off by the ending of the movie, being like, why is it ending like at this point? I think that's where Sony maybe made a little bit of a mistake. They've done fantastic with this movie. We're going to talk about that in the reviews, and I'll talk a little bit of my impressions in a sec. But it is fair to say, like, sneakily taking off the part 1, piece on that definitely meant a lot of people were walking in. And when I was in my screening, the audience members, some people really enjoyed the cliffhanger, kind of stopped. They're like, this is it. This is where we're getting to in this story. This is the resolution for this part, and we're going to do part 3 and kind of resolve it then. Some people enjoyed it, but there were some audible groans of like, what WTF? And I've seen it twice this weekend. It happened in both of them. And I knew it was going to happen. Sorry, not the groaning, but just knew that cliffhanger was going to happen, and still saw that effect each time. So that is a problem that Sony created by not having that part 1, part 2 on it. And this is nothing new. If you think about, I would, as a Matrix fan, I'll give you one example of something that worked pretty well. When the announcement trailer came for the Matrix Reloaded, Matrix Revolutions, and it said they're both coming out in the same year, I think that helped. Again, I only got to watch the Matrix Reloaded at home. I didn't get to see that one in theaters until much later. And I saw the first Matrix and Revolutions in the theater when it came out. So I don't know what I wasn't there in the audience to kind of hear those reactions. Again, I was also not old enough to be in there watching it, but that's a whole nother conversation. But people knew, all right, these are close together, so there's probably going to be some kind of end in this, and it's going to get picked up. So I would imagine the reactions to that were a lot less fraught than we're currently having right now with Across the Spider-Verse. So again, would not be surprised if, and that's honestly some of the reactions I've heard online, just talking with friend groups and in different circles on Twitter and different spaces of just some frustration of like, why there? But that's the title, third entry, Beyond the Spider-Verse. You're getting it in March 2024, so you don't have to wait an entire year, but it's also not quite like getting it in the same year. All right. Something else that gets a title change, Captain America 4 is no longer the New World Order. It's going to be called Brave New World. So I'm sure that won't confuse. I'm sure that won't confuse anyone. Let's see. We got a comment. Yay, Doom Part 1 really drained all interest I had over any chance of getting into the series. Yeah. So you're not even going to check out part 2 when it comes out. Is it November? It's either late October, November this year. Yeah, let me know what you think. That is unfortunately one of the difficulties in adapting Dune, and the reason I did that was if you've watched David Lynch's Dune, I'm assuming if you not at all, too little, too late. Gotcha. Yeah, that's the problem though with that adapting Dune is um, when David Lynch. I mean, I think David Lynch tried his best. There's a lot of studio interference, and he had obviously him and other directors that tried to approach it had different desires to do either a really long movie, um, and that was definitely nixed. So they weren't going to allow that. But what came out in 1984 was this cram packed, not enough information, and it turned into a disaster. Even if it still has some David Lynch isms that are really cool in that movie, yeah, I love it because it's just as a kid, but I also understand like I don't show that to friends and be like, yeah, you're gonna love this. I know it's got issues. So even with Denny doing his the way that he did, there's just gonna be this kind of drop. And if as much as someone is, even though I love the story and I understand it, it's like I've thought about it so many times. Like, where could you cut this in a way that makes sense and is not going to create the effect that you're talking about? And I don't know. So again, I'm not trying to excuse it. And I think if the writers, again, if you were just writing it yourself and you didn't have the source material to have to work off of, you could, and all this history behind it and so much fan expectation, you could probably just make your own decision of like, I'm gonna do my own thing and I'm gonna cut this up the way I want to. Which would probably help fix and solve that issue. But if he had done that, I think you'd have this whole other section of people that'd be furious that he had hacked it up in a certain way. So I feel you. I understand. Yeah, totally understand. Let's see. They just can't seem to get pacing right anytime they make the film. I can't help but feel like a serial would serve the series better. Have you watched the sci-fi Dune series? Because while it's aged, I mean, it's Dune that came out in early 2000s, so the production quality is shown its age. I feel like it did a really good job because I think it was 6 episodes at about an hour-ish. I really like that one. William Hurt plays Duke Leto Atreides. I think that one's pretty good. And a lot of people didn't see it, but I think it does solve all those problems. And surprisingly, with it being owned by Warner Brothers, I'm surprised it wasn't a show. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not trying to knock the movies that happened, but I've always thought this would make a really great series for a show. And for Warner Brothers, HBO owning House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones, it just seemed like a natural slam dunk. Like make this a show. Like put it on HBO. But hey, that's just me. I know we're getting some like prequel series, but I think the main series being on HBO would have made a lot of sense. But I don't know. We can talk about that more. Talk about that more later. I'll go on a whole Dune rant. Let's see. Tomorrow we're getting an Expendables 4 trailer, and I thought we were done, but apparently not. We're getting a trailer. Statham's back. 50 Cent, Megan Fox, Dolph Lundgren, Tony Jaa, Iko Uwais, Randy Couture, Andy Garcia, and of course Sylvester Stallone are going to be in it. And we got a teaser today, but the full trailer will be out tomorrow. So if that's up your alley, and I'm not knocking Expendables. It is a fun, mindless action adventure movie featuring your favorite action stars of the past 20, 30 years. So you know what you're getting when you sign up for the Expendables. I'm just kind of like, man, we're getting a fourth one of that. We're getting a Rambo. We're getting a Rambo 7. So it's fine. It's fine. Next up, I am actually excited about this. So Andy Muschietti, he's coming off of directing The Flash. And I have a lot of thoughts about that movie. save that. We'll also save that for another time. And he directed the It movies, Chapter 1 and 2. He's getting to direct the Batman Brave and the Bold movie. That's going to be the Batman and Robin movie that's going to be in James Gunn's DCU reset. Still don't know what they're going to call it. Is it still the DCEU? Are we going to shorten it just down to DCU? I don't know. We'll find out. But yeah, he's going to be directing it. And from everything I've heard about The Flash and how good it apparently is, I'm fine with this decision. I think it's a really solid decision. I liked the It movies, Chapter 1 more than 2. I think 2 had some issues, so I'm hoping that doesn't creep into Batman. And I generally like James Gunn as a director. So we'll kind of see if all these pieces will meld together. And plus, there's way more, we need to know more about what that story is going to look like, who they're casting as the Batman. There's a lot more steps we got to understand and know. But casting a solid director who's already got some work with Warner Brothers and is used to their studio and used to their system, that's a solid choice. So I think they can kind of build in some goodwill between people you're trying to bring back into the studio, and just gives Gunn someone he's like, hey, he already knows Warner Brothers, so I don't have to kind of work him through these other things. Y'all already like him as a director. He's directed 3 films for you, so a 4th just is like a slam dunk. So I like it. And again, I haven't been able to watch The Flash yet, but from everything I've heard, it sounds like he really understands the Flash character. So I'd be excited to see if he gives that same dedication to Batman. And I still get my Matt Reeves Batman. It's going to be in the Elseworld, kind of in its own continuity. So double Batman for me as a Batman fan. This is great. I love it. I love it. Before we get to our major stories, let's see. Last one, we got Kim Cattrall is back in the city, sort of. So for fans of the hit comedy series Sex and the City, Sarah Jessica Parker and Kim Cattrall have never really gotten along. And after that show ended, they really blew up. And there's a new series on HBO Max. And what is it? I think I'm going to screw the title of this thing up. Yeah, I was not going to say that right. So And Just Like That is the name of it. I get it's a phrase from the show, but that's trying to talk. Ugh, that's a mouthful. I don't like it. Anyway, Cattrall's going to be back for a scene in the season finale of season 2. That's all they could muster out of her. I won't get into all of it. There's a list of reports you can read if you want to understand the drama throughout the years between Parker and Cattrall. So definitely you can go check that out. I won't recount all that here. But that's kind of funny to me that with all that blood, that the most you could get and work out is what might effectively be a cameo, because it's not even her being in the entire episode. It's a scene. So we'll see what that results in. I apologize for folks that are fans of the show and that love Samantha, because apparently she's been from the episodes I've seen, she's one of the biggest drivers aside from Parker. And I did like the episodes I've seen of the show with her in it. But I always hate when you can't get the cast fully back together. That's one thing that's been worrying me about the upcoming Community movie. So I have some sympathy for when you can't get the entire cast back together. But stuff happens on set, or like people are not getting paid the same as the lead actor, actress, and stuff, and that stuff's real. So as much as like sometimes it might feel petty, it can be very much like tension that you have in your own workplace of like, hey, me and this group of people are being paid $10,000-$20,000 less than such and such, and I can imagine that only gets magnified more when you start talking about the millions of dollars. So for anyone that would kind of start bad-mouthing Cattrall for the issues she's experienced on set, just don't. Or maybe take a pause and reconsider that for a bit. Just because they're celebrities doesn't mean they don't still have feelings about the way they interacted with their castmates. So just putting that out there. That is all for our short stories and casting and announcements. And we're going to get into our major Hollywood stories. And this one is, everyone has been talking about, and I thought it was funny. I thought it was hilarious. Because we already said Barbie is coming out July 21st. Oppenheimer is coming out July 21st. Greta Gerwig, Christopher Nolan. grudge match. And who knew that the actual grudge match was going to be between Tom Cruise and Christopher Nolan? I did not see that one coming. Of course, now if I tell you what's happening, you might actually be like, "Oh, that actually makes more sense." So here's what's going on. Oppenheimer's been set on July 21st for a while. And if you know Christopher Nolan, he loves shooting in IMAX. We owe a lot to Nolan in the sense of like now everyone shoots in IMAX. We have smaller IMAX cameras as a result of Nolan continuing to push the format. So that has been very like there's no way we get a smaller IMAX camera if it's not from Nolan. Do you all know like you had to effectively have massive rig to hold the weight of the IMAX camera when it turned on in the past. It was like a car running inside the studio. This is just how loud it was. Some people jokingly called it a jet engine. I've heard it. It's not that loud. Hey, take it as someone who's been around jet engines. It's not that loud. But in an enclosed space, it was a loud camera. So Nolan pushing that, using that in The Dark Knight and subsequent films like that, and continuing to just use it more and more and more, showing even like his 35, the smaller format films, and mixing IMAX, and then eventually shooting everything in that. That's because of him. But also, Cruise, especially when you start thinking about the fourth Mission Impossible movie and filming large sections of that in IMAX and really championing that, he also has quite a stake to claim as far as helping IMAX become the format that people love. You know, as much as we talk about Cameron and 3D movies, when's the last time you watched a 3D movie? You might have watched it for Avatar 2, but since Avatar came out in 2007 until Avatar 2 now in 2022, yeah, I mean, the Marvel movies use a fair amounts of 3D, and 3D is still there. You still have theaters that show 3D screenings, but it's not nearly as ubiquitous as it was back in 2007. Whereas IMAX, we've only gotten even more and more IMAX, larger screen formats, and so on and so forth. So what does all that have to do between Cruise and Nolan? Well, I already told you, Oppenheimer had that date. It's had that date for a while. It's had this date for a while. And then Mission Impossible decided to move to that first weekend in July. So it's got a 2-week gap between it and Oppenheimer. And I guess Paramount just thought they were going to get more IMAX time, even though Oppenheimer had already confirmed the week they were going to have on top of additional weeks of IMAX exclusive IMAX time. And Cruise is pissed. Cruise is going around to every chain he can to try to get, even if he can't get IMAX for Mission Impossible, he's trying to get it in any other big format. So again, there's always like 40X and other formats that are large, but maybe not IMAX and so on. So he's trying to get anything he can to try to get his movie out in it. He's even booking private screenings with exhibitors, other theater exhibitors, to show them like, look at how good this movie is going to be. You got to get it. You got to put it in your biggest format. And this is where I teased earlier that I probably was going to fall on this differently than you might expect. Because normally I'm a really big champion of Nolan. Although he's irritated me. Like Tenet, as much as I love parts of it, he's losing the plot a little bit. That's a subject for another video. So I probably, as the one that really popularized IMAX, I usually would be on Nolan's side on this. But does anyone think that Oppenheimer, as much as it's going to probably look great in IMAX, is the movie that should be taking up that many screens in IMAX? I'm just saying. I'm not saying it's not worthy of the IMAX format that it's been shot in. But as far as like what's probably going to be a better experience and what theater owners need right now, it's probably Mission Impossible. So that's an uncomfortable thing, and people might be, I mean, especially if there's really big Nolan fans, they might be a little annoyed at me, but I'm just being honest. How many empty IMAX screens, how many empty CG things are going to be from Oppenheimer after it opens in July? That probably could be filled by Mission Impossible. So yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be the big issue is that because these contracts get wrapped up and locked up like years in advance, and say you will show my movie for so much time, give so much revenue on it in the lead up or past the date that it releases. Disney's been pretty infamous for having pretty high cuts of that and how many screens have to show those movies. And then exhibitors get screwed when no one goes to see Ant-Man and the Wasp, but they still have to show it in X number of theaters and they can't change course. So Cruise has a point that Mission Impossible probably gets more people, more butts in seats, and would probably benefit from having more IMAX. But to me, that's a thing between Paramount, which ends up screening both of them, really needs to come and see if they could work that out, or give the exhibitors the option to make the choice the weekend of like, hey, we already showed Oppenheimer for a week, and we already didn't have strong sales in these rooms. Let us make the adjustments so as a screener of this content, I can make the best choice for my theater. I think that would be the best case. I think if you're just saying mandating completely that Mission Impossible should be the one to go over all of it, I wouldn't agree with that. But just give the exhibitors the option. Let them release out of that contract after the first weekends of both these movies, and just let them pick what they think the best one is for that weekend. Because they're going to know their audiences better than even sometimes the Hollywood execs. Let's see. OMG says, yeah, but isn't Cruise a Scientologist? I think that makes me want to disagree with him regardless. Yeah. I'm not mad at that, because Cruise is still, as much as he might be advocating for a lot of cool things and good things in the movie industry, he's still a problematic individual. The cult of personality he's generated within Scientology as well. That's something to be worried about. And we don't talk about it enough. We're getting ready to release The Flash, and I'm already seeing reviews, and I'm also wondering, like, why are we reviewing this if we know the lead actor playing a double role in the movie, if I might add, has been involved in a lot of heinous stuff, but we're just kind of brushing that. We're just brushing that to the side. And we've had reports on Cruise, and we're just kind of brushing those to the side. Everybody wants to separate the art from the artist, and that's and the key phrase everyone uses, like, it's a complicated conversation. Or, and this is crazy, maybe we just don't release the movie right now, until we see that Ezra's made progress, as an example. And it's not trying to say that Cruise can't practice religion that he wants to, but I think we have enough evidence to show that Scientology's got a lot of problematic things going on behind the scenes. And I forget what the actress name is from King of Queens, who got out of Scientology and gave basically her report of what happened to her time there, and also gave some information on Cruise. But I thought that should have been enough to, if I can get some more information, that'd be a good conversation to have too. But yeah, he can be right about Mission Impossible and still be a terrible person. So that's where I'll end that. All right. Let's see. So actually, we only got two more things. I talked a little bit about Little Mermaid in the box office, and so I'm not sure exactly. I want to spend some more time trying to figure out what's going on there. A lot of people, basically, here I'll summarize it super quick because I want to spend more time on the writer's strike and recent things that came out today, and then finish with Spider-Man. So some things happening with Little Mermaid. People are talking about racial backlash and worldwide gross. So as far as like South Korea and China not reacting positively to Little Mermaid, we already talked about action movies do a lot better across the board. And there's been some other Disney live action remakes that also didn't do super well in China. And the Chinese box office has gotten really weird. Now, you can't count that every movie that's going to go in there, one, if it's going to even be approved to go in, that's another issue. But two, even that if it does make it into that box office, since the pandemic, everything's been weird. Nothing's been predictable in the Chinese box office for U.S. movies or any other movie abroad going into it, period. So if people are counting on a lot of box office from China, I don't know why you're surprised that things have been fluctuating so wildly. On top of it, they're releasing way more movies in the past 5 to 6 years of their own than they have in the probably the last 2 decades. So there is a real big push to like see the Wandering Earth sequel. Um, I forget the recent. There was one in particular. I apologize for not having the name in front of me. There's another major release that came out and did really well in their box offices for the time that they were able to even go to the movie theaters. That's a whole nother problem. Their lockdown situation is still happening and different in China as well. So I'm not saying there isn't racial backlash to the Little Mermaid happening, and that's even happening domestically, but it still had a pretty solid Memorial Day weekend. Um, and this maybe is just an adjustment for the Disney remakes. I mean, this is we're in the teens now. I had Dan Merle actually did a really good list over on his YouTube channel. Like we've had a lot of Disney live action remakes, and there's a lot more of them that have done worse than. I think people looked at Lion King and Aladdin as like, oh, these make billions of dollars automatically. It might be the same. There might be the same issue as we were talking about the Marvel box office. Is that why are you expecting that every single one of these is going to make $1 billion? I think that's maybe where you need to Disney specifically needs to readjust their expectations for these movies, and Little Mermaid might be the first kind of casualty of that, unfortunately. But just to give you a context, its domestic right now is at 186 million, and its worldwide box office is currently sitting at 332 million worldwide. So we got to see again how it does weekend after weekend, especially with other movies like Spider-Man's out, about to get Transformers, and we still got Flash and other things coming out. And does it pick up at all in the worldwide box office? But if Little Mermaid makes 500 million, you know how many directors would be thrilled about that or would love that as a box office hit? But again, it's those Disney $1 billion expectations of this is one of our most beloved properties and put it in live action. It should be a slam dunk. And I don't know if that's going to work in this modern box office, especially post pandemic. So I don't know. I need more information, but I think if people just point to race, I'm like, it is a factor, but I don't think it is the factor because it also wouldn't explain Aladdin. To me, Aladdin's a very diverse cast and still made $1 billion, even though the movie is it's just okay. I liked it, but it's just okay. And that didn't seem to affect that. I think I think it's too easy to just go for that. Again, not saying it's not a factor, but we need more data. We need more information. So that's all I'll say for that right now. So lastly, update on the writer strike, and then we're gonna talk some Spider-Man. And again, I promise no spoilers for Spider-Man, just general impressions. So DGA, the Directors Guild of America, has tentatively approved the deal given to it by the Producers Association of America. It's a long acronym. I'm not repeating that one for the producers. I'm not doing it. But that one's been tentatively agreed to. The Directors Guild, they still have to vote on it. SAG-AFTRA, the representing the Actors Guild, has a nut. This is crazy. I just want you to grasp your head on the percentage I'm about to tell you. They authorized a strike. That's not saying they will strike, but they have authorized a strike at 97% approval. So of the people that voted, 97% approved the strike. Like, wow. There's been a lot. You can kind of go through some strike authorizations that happened in the past. That's bananas. That is wild. I don't know if I can be more wide-eyed to you about that. That is wild. So again, not sure if it's going to happen. I think in solidarity and everything we're hearing, it sounds like in solidarity with the Writers Guild, they are going to strike, regardless of what deal happens. And even though I just told you, again, the tentative deal for the DGA has been floated, and the board for the DGA has approved that deal. It sounds like in solidarity, DGA will also strike or not accept the deal, tentative of WGA and SAG getting their deals as well. So they could, I know it sounds weird, but they could effectively strike without striking. They could just kind of kind of like stiff arm accepting the deal for a while before they decide to strike. Because they have not, the DGA, to be clear, has not done a, excuse me, the DGA has not done a strike authorization. And basically what that means is just, it doesn't mean you're going to strike. It's just, again, it's just make sure we have the approval to do a strike if we need to. That's what the WGA did before they officially did it, and that's what SAG has just done before they probably will inevitably probably do that. So DGA, to my knowledge, and as of this reporting, has not done that. Still doesn't mean that they can't, but having a deal in place, you might argue like, and it's not bad faith to have that deal in place and then not accept it. They don't have to. This happens all the time where maybe you're like, that sounds good. Would you just wait until the last possible second to sign it to see if maybe they can work it out with SAG and WGA? But again, they could also just pull out. They have a variety of options they could write up and do. And I've been teasing this. Keep your calendars marked for June 30th. Keep your calendars marked for June 30th, because that is when the DGA deal officially will expire. So if they have not accepted it by then, we know what's going to happen. And SAG, even with their strike authorization, and if they do get a deal thrown to them by the producers, have until both of those are going to expire before June 30th. So we're going to know pretty soon, by the end of this month, where the WGA and where the whole direction of this is going to go in pretty short order. Today is June 6th, so we got about 24 days, a little over 3 weeks, less than a month, to find out what's going to happen. And as far as content for the fall, that's pretty much, movies-wise, is not really going to be affected. Those are in post-production. A lot of them can film what's already been scripted. It's really the fall TV slate that's in flux right now. And then movies that need to be made now to release in the spring, getting into that summertime frame for next year, those are being affected. So we're going to know very quickly where things are headed. I hope that the SAG strike, at least that authorization, strikes some fear into the hearts of Netflix and Disney and so on and so forth, Warner Brothers, and I hope so, but it remains to be seen. But we're just ticking down days until June 30th, and I'm not saying that it will be immediately fixed getting to June 30th. Again, there's still so many variables, but I think there is no other important date until we get to that one. Anything else anyone tells you about TV dates and stuff like that does not matter until we find out what happens before June 30th. So we are in the period, and who knows? Tomorrow, DJ could announce they gave a strike authorization. That might really move everything up, and I might get the producers to get something knocked out tomorrow, like the next day. That would be awesome. I don't know if they're going to do it, because it sounds like the deal they got for the DGA was solid. And again, that's in a written statement by the WGA. They talked about how much of that is being a benefit from the strike already happening with WGA. But not knowing the finer language, they respectfully said we're not going to comment on the specific details of their deal because they just don't know it. And again, I don't have access to that agreement either. But yeah, spicy times in Hollywood. Spicy. All right. So we'll give you updates on that when it comes out. I'm sure by next week, next Tuesday night, we'll know a lot. I'm sure we'll know a lot more. I can almost guarantee it. I won't, but I can almost guarantee we're gonna know a lot more. And that brings us to the last segment of the weekend. And again, I promised I got my review coming out tomorrow. So there's gonna be a video review, written review. You can enjoy both of those. And there'll be a spoiler one as well, along with just the biggest questions that come out of the movie. But I have said, as a fan of The Dark Knight, when I watched Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the first one in this series, at least trilogy for now, we'll see if anything else happens, that when I walked out, I didn't want to say it yet, because I needed some time to process. Well, I felt like at the time that Into the Spider-Verse was the best comic book movie that had ever been made. And I know Heath Ledger's performance in Dark Knight. I'm a person that watched The Dark Knight religiously. The summer of 2008, I had it wasn't my first car, but it was one of my first cars. Had money in my pocket, was working after college. So was still in college, but I'm just saying, like, it was a summer between college semesters, and just anytime I could get into the theater, then it made sense. I was watching A Dark Knight. I watched it way too many times that summer when it came out. Took friends to see it when we got back in the semester of college, and it was still playing. Like, just stupid how much I watched it. But Into the Spider-Verse comes out, and I'm like, isn't this it? I mean, isn't this everything that you want a solid comic book movie to be, especially one that's tackling multiple origins and does them so well, visually interesting, music score, just not even talking about the soundtrack. The score is fantastic. On top of the soundtrack, also working really well as a score in itself. Each song kind of having a really good meaning for each thing that Miles is going through. And then it also wins the animation Oscar that year. So yeah, other people recognizing that was good too. And I was like, there's no way the sequel could match that. There's no way the sequel could top that, because that's a hard thing to do, especially, I've talked about Spider-Man 2, X2 being some of my favorite comic book movies. I know sometimes they don't necessarily age well, and it's not a knock on the first Spider-Man and the first X-Men, but I think they're okay movies. So the sequels exceeding them is actually not that big of a surprise. Spider-Man 2 is the benefit of all the origin stuff being taken care of, so now I can just run. And then I can just be like, you know what? Being Spider-Man sucks. Here's Spider-Man 2. Understand why it sucks. And go. X2. We're going to show you more problematic humans. Stryker. A little bit of Wolverine's origin. And then Nightcrawler kicks off the movie in that White House scene. And just like, bam, 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 bam. But the first X-Men is just, it's solid. It's okay. It was great for being one of the first big superhero ensembles that we had. But it wasn't I think people would much rather pop X2 in right now than rewatch the first X-Men. I could be, maybe we could get some polling on that. Maybe people feel differently. So to me, it's not surprising that those are better than their original movies. I don't think it's hyperbolic. I don't think it's hyperbole to say that Across the Spider-Verse not only matches the first movie, but exceeds it in just about every way. Cosmonaut Picture Show said that they didn't feel like the movie was resolved because there was the part 3 coming. So they didn't feel like they could say it's perfect because they don't really know how it's going to end. I would disagree. I think this movie has a solid beginning and end. Yes, there's obviously an arc, Miles's complete arc from the first movie, this one, and the third one that's not complete. Excuse me. But the movie starts off kind of giving us some backstory on Gwen, and the movie decides to end and encapsulate that journey. And I'm not saying it turns into a Gwen movie. That's not. I think some people have said that. I had a friend DM me and message me that. I disagree with that assessment, but it is showing, like, we're going to show you part of Miles's perspective through Gwen, and because we chose that angle, at least for parts of the movie, it makes sense to cap this second movie through her perspective in the beginning and the end. And for me, that makes the arc of this second movie really solid. It's like, this is it. This is what you're getting for this part of the story. Miles's arc is not done. Yes, that is where the cliffhanger is. So that is fine. But for people to say, like, oh, I'm unsatisfied, there's no conclusion. It's like, there is a conclusion. It's just not the conclusion for the character that you want. So I think if that's frustrating for you, Okay, fine. But I didn't mind it. I was even worried seeing that they were going to start with her story and like, ugh, where's this gonna? Oh, okay, all right. I'm gonna let y'all cook. Ooh, y'all cooking some good. Y'all cooking some good stuff in there. You got some shrimp. You got some shrimp and grits. You got some shrimp and grits. You got some etouffee. What's going on in there? So I was really glad to kind of let that. I was worried, and then I was like, let me just sit back, see if they get. Okay, y'all got this. You know what you're doing. Um, and to anyone that would say like animation is not a, and this comes out of the woodworks, or we're ranking movies. People are like, I can't put this above. I can't put Spider Verse. I can't just like I can't even put the first one above the live action movies because it's a cartoon. I'm like, stop it, stop it. There's a scene where they're saving some people. I won't spoil when this again happens, but some of the characters are working together to save people in a part of maybe toward the end of the first act. And in the Alamo, you can kind of be like leaned back, but I noticed myself was kind of up in my seat and my hands were kind of gripping a little bit because just the tension of that scene was so good. And I'm like, ooh, ooh. And it's like, I was gonna say, all they're doing is saving people. But it was just a really well done amount of peril. You've seen how the city looks ahead of before this incident happens, so as this building is collapsing, like just what's going to happen to everyone that's beneath this building. You visually understand that because all the information that's not what they were trying to telegraph, but that information helps you build up of like, oh, that's not good. Oh, that's not good. So like it just beautiful build of tension in that scene. So to anyone that would say like these movies are not valid because they're not live action or you can't feel the same stakes, just hush. To me, that immediately invalidates your opinion. I found it just as suspenseful as a live action. I was able to connect just as well. And this movie's pulling out all the tricks. They really are. I mean, they're pulling in every grab bag they can from a visual and I was at some point I was kind of like tracking like, oh yeah, and they're doing this is a reference to that. And I had to give up. I really did. Even when I talk my spoiler one, I'm gonna be missing stuff. I'm gonna be missing information because I'm just not gonna have it. Because I had to give up. I could not keep track of all of it. And I promise you, any list that's out there and says these are all the Easter eggs, if they don't put so far on that list, they're lying. Because I promise you, they did not catch everything. If you've not had the opportunity to hit pause and like write down notes, you're lying. You better put Easter eggs we've found so far, because that's what I'm gonna do. Because legitimately, I had to give up. And the art styles, I lost track. And there's some I didn't even know. So I know, yeah. I need any of my artist friends that are gonna jump on the pod here in this week or so. You got to help me out because I don't know. I know I missed stuff. You gotta let me know. So, yeah, it is a knockout. Just for folks that haven't watched it yet, just again realize it is a part 1 of 2. So that doesn't end abruptly. They definitely are kind of telegraphing that there is going to be a kind of a resolution here, but it's not finished. So, and again, it's already talked about my audience and the people that I attended with in my screenings. Definitely, some people loved it. Some people kind of had a, how dare you, it's so good. And as someone that sometimes gets disillusioned by movies, especially blockbusters, it's refreshing to say that how solid. Again, I'll keep saying refreshing until I need more water, but it really is. It's a breath of fresh air. And honestly, this I'm not meaning this as a dig at Marvel, but they've done more to make a more compelling multiverse and talk about that as a concept in 2 movies than the MCU has done in the entire Phase 4. Yeah, fight me. I mean, it's the same, like everything everywhere at once, everything everywhere all at once, kind of same deal. They took 2 characters and they're like, we're going to focus on them. Yes, there's all these other elements, but We're going to make sure that we have these two characters really well fleshed out. So all the stuff that's going on, you can relate to the multiverse things that are happening with the different, because you got two people to kind of focus in on. Spider-Verse is in a similar way. We know these characters, we know the Spider-Man canon, and it's helping us understand them so well that regardless of how many people get thrown on screen, we know who we're following through this journey. That's massive. So yeah, it is not, fight me. It's done a better job of making stakes for the multiverse without having to go read additional material, watching extra shows than the MCU has. And I think they take some notes, and that's not a knock on Kang, especially in the Loki series. I liked that. I feel like that was a really solid. I get that. But as far as how that's been implemented and executed in other media, no, I have not enjoyed that as a whole, as a cohesive whole. That's not a judgment on the different movies. Just that one element trying to build out. I haven't enjoyed that. But if you've seen it, let me know your thoughts. Let me know your impressions. Please don't spoil things. If you just want to give your impressions on what you thought of the movie, you can do that in the comments of this video. Let us know in the Nerd Union Discord. We'll make sure that link's available on this video. And if we also have spoiler chats in the Discord, so if you want to have a spoiler chat in Discord, definitely feel free to join us there. I'm on Clubhouse tomorrow at 6 p.m. Central Time. So if you want to join me there for a spoiler chat, we definitely can have that there. And then when my spoiler video comes out tomorrow, definitely feel free to fill comments on there because that's fair game. Hey, it's a spoiler video. If you're clicking on that and you haven't watched the movie yet, that's on you. I even give you a warning in the beginning of the video. So that's where you can have spoiler chats. Let's not do it here, but I just want to give people my quick impressions. And I think it's going to have a really solid second weekend at the box office. Would be really surprised if it doesn't. Before we sign off, let me check comments. Well, X-Men had a lot of heavy lifting to do for introducing comments. For introducing characters, don't think common audiences knew who anyone was other than Wolverine before it came out. Would totally agree. And that's the thing with an origin movie is that it can be hard to want to pivot and do some other things with it too. Like it's really, I have to trying to think. Are there other origin movies? I want to think on that more. I mean, Spider-Verse to me, as far as introducing Morales, is pretty good. It also has a bunch of characters, but it benefits because we already know the Spider-Man story, and there's a lot of so that doesn't. To your point, that doesn't really count. So X-Men, you've got the '90s X-Men cartoon, but that's still you either were in the '90s and grew up on that cartoon show, and a lot of people hadn't read the Brian Michael Bendis and the other Chris Claremont runs and stuff like that. That's a solid point because like Spider-Man 1, even if you haven't read a Spider-Man comic, he's a kid that gets bit by a radioactive spider. Superman came from a planet, gets stronger on Earth. Batman, parents died, turns himself into a hero. X-Men, there's a lot to work through. Oh, Guardians. I mean, X-Men 1 and Guardians probably share some similarities of having to kind of very quickly introduce you to an ensemble cast. Those have done really well. Our clunkers in that category. This is not disparaging Eternals. Eternals has some issues there. The Fantastic Four movies have not done well. Honestly, Incredibles is a much better Fantastic Four movie than the Fantastic Four movies have been. Good. I like that. X-Men 1, heavy lifting. To be clear, I also haven't watched it in a couple of years. It hasn't been that long. It's been like probably 2 or 3. I definitely would have watched it before Days of Future Past. Man, I guess that actually has been a little bit. 2017 Future Past or 2016, 2017. It's been a little bit because I rewatch X2 all the time. I love that movie. But great comment. Had to introduce a lot of characters, and I say the most recent example of doing that well would probably be Guardians. So I will go back and rewatch X1, try to get more fond look. Cool. Thanks everyone for joining us on the inaugural episode of Content Not Found. If you liked what you watched here, make sure you hit like and subscribe on our YouTube channel or wherever you may be watching us, because we got this up on Twitch and Facebook. If you don't like watching the entire show, if you're like an hour-ish show, it's not for me. Hey, you can also listen to this as a podcast. This will be out later this week as the podcast version. And if you like clips, we'll have clips up on TikTok and our various social media platforms as well. So I also apologize. My voice decided to change midway through the podcast. So it's definitely changing. You're probably going to be like, hey, something's happening by the middle of that episode. Yeah, I can hear it myself. Getting nasal and stopped up. So thank you all for joining us. This has been Content Not Found. Commander Ship signing off. Thanks, and appreciate you joining me for the stream. And look forward to talking to you all soon. Bye.